So I'll go ahead and get started with our number A, which is Fatema S. And this is a motion, a delegation in regards to the motion that is on our agenda tonight related to anti-Palestinian racism. She's joining us online this evening. So Fatema, if you can hear me, welcome, and you can go ahead and get started.
Thank you so much. HWDSB Director, Senior Leaderships, Trustees, and fellow students, good evening. Today, we have all gathered here to speak on an extremely important issue that many schools have chosen to do nothing about. With the current events occurring in Palestine, there have been a rise in anti-Muslim and anti-Palestinian racism throughout HWDSB. Before I begin, there are a few things I would like to state that are related to Palestine's history and the current genocide. Firstly, that the Palestinian issue is not only a Muslim issue, but a humanitarian issue. Secondly, the genocide in Palestine did not begin on October 7, 2023, but in 1947 and 1948, when 2 million Palestinians living across 550 villages were forced to leave homes and seek refuge in refugee camps. To this day, millions of Palestinians have faced ethnic cleansing as well as faced extreme hardships due to the genocide that is present. At a global scale, millions of people have gathered and protested their support to Palestine, as well as gathered to stop the genocide and ethnic cleansing of the people of Palestine. As a prominent Muslim student at my school, I too, along with many students, have faced anti-Muslim acts. I've been called a terrorist and have been asked if I'm going to blow up my school next. Additionally, many students at my school were wearing keffiyehs and brought Palestinian flags to school, and they were asked to remove them by staff members as they would face consequences if they didn't comply. An act like this is not acceptable at all, as according to the dress code, HWDSB students have the right to express themselves, feel comfortable in what they wear, and the freedom to make dress choices, meaning that students should not be threatened to face consequences for wearing a keffiyeh to school. In addition, student initiatives to show their support towards Palestine were shut down. As one of the presidents of my school's MSA, we were unable to have a keffiyeh day and Palestinian Color Day. This happened as our teacher supervisor for the MSA said the conflict currently occurring was too complicated and political, and having a keffiyeh day would not be a good idea. Another instance of Palestinian racism at our school was during our walkout. There were many students who were bashing multiple students and telling us that we were wasting our time, as Palestine would never be free and our efforts would be going to waste. Another tipping point is when we find out Jewish students at our school and other schools were exempted from the Remembrance Day assembly. These students were talked to by their teachers and were told that they were allowed to miss the assembly as it would be too emotional for them due to the current events in the country. When many Muslim students at my school and other schools found out that these Jewish students have been talked to, they felt as if they were not being supported by their schools, as they were favoring one religion or race over the other. One student from a school stated that a male student tried to pull off my hijab and blame me for 9/11. He called me and my friends terrorists and told us to go back to the Middle East and stop bringing Islam to the country. As a school board that preaches equity and well-being for all its students, this incident that occurred is not acceptable, and an incident like this makes Muslim students feel unsafe when coming to schools. Students who are pulling stunts like this should face consequences, as if they don't, they will feel as if what they are doing is fine, when in reality, it is the complete opposite. HWDSB has no longer stayed as a safe place for many Muslim and Palestinian students, and this should be rectified as soon as possible. Thomas's motion is vital as it discusses all the issues students are facing. Some are, but not limited to, the increased levels of anti-Palestinian and anti-Muslim racism in schools, initiatives for Palestine being shut down, students not being able to freely express themselves, as well as the unjust treatment by staff members towards students. Thomas's motion ensures that students at HWDSB will feel safe by being who they are at school, as well as ensure that people face disciplinary acts for any unjust disciplinary measures that were taken, and provide staff with training on fundraising policies and dress code guidelines so students do not face any unjust penalization. As a Muslim student and as a human being, I would like the respect and the acknowledgement of the school board towards students who are taking initiatives to support Palestine and raise awareness about the ongoing genocide. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fatema, for sharing that with us. Before I turn to questions, I'll share this with you. If you do need extra support directly from staff, you're welcome to reach out to Trustee Officer Miller, who's the person who you were working with for your delegation, and she will she can offer support to connect with appropriate staff for some of the incidents that you shared that are obviously very, very concerning. So trustees around the table, are there any comments or, excuse me, are there any questions to our delegate for clarification purposes? Okay, go ahead, Trustee Dahab.
Thank you, through the chair. I don't have a question. I just wanted to say thank you for being here with us virtually, for sharing your experiences and your words. Yeah, I know it's not easy to be in these spaces, so I just wanted to say thank you for speaking up tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Trustee Dahab. Student Trustee Lin, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to echo what Trustee Dahab just said. Fatema, you're a great student leader at Ancaster High, and thank you for doing this to support this motion as well to speak about your experiences.
Thank you.
Thank you, Student Trustee Lin. Not seeing any other questions. Thank you so much for joining us, Fatema. I'll be now moving to our next delegation, which is from Jenna S., and it is on the same topic, also for 10 minutes. So if you're in the room, you can proceed to the podium now. Thank you so much.
Esteemed members of the school board, fellow students, trustees, and respected educators, my name is Jenna. I am one of the many Palestinian students who attend a school at HWDSB. I stand before you today with a heavy heart that is driven by an urgent need for change within our school communities. The motion before us is not merely a set of words on a document. It embodies the collective voice of students who have endured the weight of injustice, discrimination, and the suffocating silence that has filled our hallways for far too long. We can no longer stand by and allow anti-Palestinian racism and Islamophobia to find a breeding ground within our walls, poisoning the very essence of what this school board stands for, a safe haven for all to learn, grow, and express themselves freely and safely. In the past month, approximately 600 fellow students, including myself, have risen in union and walked out of high schools across Hamilton, raising their voices, demanding a ceasefire and an end to the occupation in Palestine. These students, driven by empathy and a sense of justice, faced adversity as they stood up for what they believed in. Yet their cries were met with threats of suspension and disciplinary action by staff and administrators. The simple act of uttering "Free Palestine" or proudly wearing a keffiyeh, a symbol of Palestinian culture, became grounds for punishment and shaming. Our fellow students are being forced to choose between their right to express their identity and staying silent in order to stay out of trouble, to the point where some of my peers and friends are even too afraid of coming to school. We are a nation that has grappled with a dark past marked by the mistreatment and dehumanization of Indigenous communities. Today, we find ourselves at a crossroads where our responsibility transcends borders, echoing the painful lessons of history. As Canada once failed to protect and support its Indigenous communities, we now find ourselves failing to protect and support yet another Indigenous group, the Palestinian people. I urgently ask you to reflect on the experiences of our peers who face daily struggles against Islamophobia, enduring taunts and name-calling, and having their cultural and religious symbols, such as hijabs and keffiyehs, becoming targets of ridicule and shaming. This is not the inclusive and nurturing environment that we should aspire to create within our schools. Our collective consensus calls for a change. The resolutions proposed in this motion are the pathways to redemption. We plea for a review of all disciplinary actions seeking to retract any unjust measures that were taken against our peers. We call for training for all staff and administrators on updated dress code guidelines to ensure that cultural attire, including the keffiyeh, is embraced rather than met with discrimination. We demand training on student safety during world events, ensuring that our educators are equipped to handle the serious discussions regarding global issues without stifling the voices of our youth or having personal biases get in the way. Fundamentally, we ask for a reaffirmation of our commitment to a fundraising policy that fosters understanding, empathy, and upholds student activism values. that should be at the core of our educational experience. Let us be the generation that breaks the cycle, the generation that is not afraid to fight for what is right, the generation that will be remembered and known as empowering and impactful. By voting in favor of this motion, we send a powerful message, a message that our schools radiate inclusivity, understanding, and support for all, regardless of their cultural background. Together, let us pave the way for a future where every student feels safe, valued, and free to express their identity without fear. Thank you so much.
Wrong button. Thank you so much, Jenna. And I will echo what I shared at the end of the previous delegation. If you do need further school-based support, we're happy to make those connections for you. Turning to trustees now, are there any questions for clarification from our current delegate, Jenna? Oh, Trustee Dahab, apologies.
Thank you. Again, it's not a question. I just wanted to publicly say thank you for sharing your words with us this evening and demanding more of us as a board.
Thank you, Trustee Dahab. Student Trustee Lin, I thought I saw you reaching for your mic. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Jenna, for coming and talking about your experiences. These are the student leadership that we want to see in HWDSB, and thank you for representing us.
Okay, thank you so much. And for our final oral delegation, I just have Lana, and I believe you've asked perhaps for Jenna to stand beside you for support, so both of you can approach the podium if you'd like.
We are here today to speak on a very important issue, an issue that schools seem to do anything in their power to ignore. In our history classes, we learn about genocides, we learn about problems that other countries have caused, yet when it comes to Palestine and Israel, all of a sudden, everyone goes radio silent, unless we're only speaking on one side of the situation, the predominantly white side. As a Palestinian student, I feel it is extremely important to speak on this issue, but even more important to educate your teachers. I have heard racist comment after racist comment since October the 7th, and shockingly, it has come from more teachers than students. From being told that what my family in Gaza is currently experiencing was not true because he didn't see it on the news, to my country's flag being called the Hamas flag. Hearing these things from your educators shuts you down in a way nothing else possibly can. These are the people who are supposed to lift you up, show you your full potential, and help you become the person you desire to be. But clearly I can tell this is no longer the motive for teachers, because instead of hearing good job and I'm so proud of you, I'm hearing Palestinians are terrorists. As a student who wants to become an educator, it baffles my mind how someone can go through years of university thinking, I want to change kids' lives for the better, just to completely turn on their original plan. And rather than help kids, spread lies to them and ruin their mental health. Students get punished for speaking on Palestine. We're told it's a controversial topic and they don't want anyone to get offended. Yet when Israel is brought up, all those rules seem to magically fade away. Teachers always speak on the 1,200 Israelis that were killed on October the 7th. And don't get me wrong, any lives lost is terrible. But what about the more than 20,000 people, mostly being children, that have been murdered since October the 7th? What about the thousands of Palestinians being displaced and forced out of their homes? What about the fact that Gaza is now known as the world's largest concentration camp / open-air prison? What about the people outside of Palestine that are getting killed and severely harassed just because they're Palestinian? And what about the fact that Israel has been doing this to Palestinians since 1948? If you're going to speak on this, please do your research before you do. I'm sick and tired of people's behavior. The fact that me, a 16-year-old girl, knows better than majority of these people, I have to call my teachers, not only on this genocide, but on their rules of what they're allowed to speak on and how they're allowed to speak to students and how to treat students with basic human respect is insane. All that money spent on your education wasted because you decided to be racist. Speaking on racism, a week ago, my brother was sent to the principal's office to, as his teacher said, be re-educated for speaking on where he's from. Just for his excuse of a principal to tell him Palestine does not deserve to be free and he can never speak on our country again. Mind you, he's only 12 years old. I see that educators are silencing people from a young age now so that they can't speak for what they believe in or stand up for themselves. Funny how that's the exact same thing teachers always tell us to do. Well, I'm done being silenced. These teachers say I should give them my respect, yet never explained why. I don't know you and you don't know me. You might be a bad person up there and I wouldn't have a clue. But the truth is, respect needs to be earned. I will no longer respect you if you treat me like the runt of the litter that nobody wants. If you throw racist comments at me, and if you have the audacity to tell me what my family is currently going through isn't really happening. Nobody will ever get my respect until these teachers treat me right, which should not be that hard. All you have to do is not be racist. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Lana. Thank you, everyone in the gallery. Thank you. Thank you very much, Lana. Again, I'll share. You are free to contact Trustee Officer Miller, who helped you with the delegation, if you need school-based support. Are there any comments or questions? Go ahead, Trustee Dahab.
I don't have any questions. I think all of your words this evening have been super clear. I think they're a call to action for us. And I will have more to say once the motion comes forward on the floor. But thank you for being here, for speaking. Again, I know it's not easy. And it sucks to have to keep coming forward and talking about your experiences all the time for people to see you as a human. And I hope that the silence around this boardroom is because we're all reflecting deeply on all of the words you've shared with us to all the 3 delegates this evening. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Trustee Dahab. Any other comments or questions for the delegate? Student Trustee Lin?
Yeah, so I want to thank all 3 delegators for coming forward today, and Lana for just speaking. You guys have amazing student leadership and amazing vocal advocacy, and it's great to have you guys here to talk about such an important issue. Students in HWDSB have been desperately to talk about, to face head on, and you guys are doing that excellently. Thank you.
Thank you, Student Trustee Lin. Thank you. And if I can just ask, I appreciate the applause of support, but if we can please refrain from any other applause for the rest of the evening, just so that we can move through. But thank you, everyone who has delegated to us this evening. We do know that it is a very daunting and very scary endeavor to take on, and we respect very much the stories that you've shared with us this evening. All right, trustees, moving on. I'll be going to item number 4, which is approval of the agenda. I have been notified by Student Trustee Lin that he is looking to make an amendment. Go ahead, Student Trustee Lin, excuse me.
Yes, I'd like to make an amendment to the agenda. So considering we have a lot of students in the gallery who are currently watching this board meeting, and considering they also have school tomorrow, and the board meeting could go beyond their regular bedtimes, etc., to ensure that they can get a solid night of sleep tonight, I wish that we can make an amendment to move item number 13A to item number 7, or before, above the all other matters of discussion. This is my amendment. Thank you.
So Student Trustee Lin, it would be just after correspondence, so that would make it 7C. Is that correct? Okay, sorry. It'll be just after correspondence. Okay, so I'm looking for a ward trustee to sponsor that. Thank you, Trustee Dahab, seconded by Trustee Noble. All in favor of that. And excuse me, apologies. Before I do that, did you have an amendment you wanted to make to content as well? Oh, okay. Sorry. Thank you. Apologies. Thank you. So sorry, that was Trustee Dahab who put the motion on the floor. Not student trustee, Trustee Noble, seconder. All in favor of that action. Thank you. That is unanimous with Trustee Archer online. Thank you for signaling your approval there.
Through the chair, for the record, I'll be reading my motion.
Yes, thank you.
And for the record, there is a slight wording adjustment that I will make as I read the motion. So what I read will be on the record. Whereas students are citing increased levels of anti-Palestinian racism in schools, including but not limited to the threat of suspensions or other disciplinary action for saying Free Palestine, and are being asked to remove their keffiyeh, which is a symbol of Palestinian culture. Whereas students across HWDSB are citing increased levels of Islamophobia, including but not limited to being called terrorists in their schools for wearing a keffiyeh. Whereas approximately 600 students at 5 HWDSB schools have walked out of high schools demanding a ceasefire and an end to the occupation in Palestine, including Saltfleet, Ancaster, Glendale, Henderson, Westmount. Whereas students across HWDSB have cited that student initiatives such as fundraisers, spirit days, and walkouts for Palestine have been shut down and clubs have been threatened with being disbanded for such initiatives. Whereas all students, including Palestinian students, deserve to be safe in their schools without experiencing anti-Palestinian racism or Islamophobia. Therefore, be resolved that HWDSB provide training to all school staff on Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, and anti-Palestinian racism, with the training to include a focus on how this racism informs disciplinary action. Be it further resolved that HWDSB provide clarification to all school staff on the updated dress code guidelines, which protect students from discrimination against cultural dress or headwear requirements, including the keffiyeh, to support religious or creed accommodations. Be it further resolved that HWDSB provide clarification to all school staff on our current fundraising policy, which states that, quote, fundraising may be used to support humanitarian or charitable causes that can increase student understanding, empathy, and activism in helping to address local, national, and international issues. Be it further resolved that HWDSB staff provide a report back to the Board of Trustees on all of the above actions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Student Trustee Lin. And I did hear an amendment in there in terms of content. So trustees, if you please make a note of that. So I'll be looking for a supporter, as this is coming from a student trustee. Trustee Dahab, thank you. I have you as our first sponsor, and Trustee White as the seconder. So Trustee Dahab is the first sponsor. Please go ahead and make your statement.
Thank you.
Sorry, through the chair, just a point of order. Traditionally, we allow the student trustee to make the statement.
Trustee Officer Miller was just sharing that. Apologies for passing you over there. I didn't mean to do that. Student Trustee Lin, if you have anything that you would like to say now that you've read your motion and onto the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. I do. Through the chair, I appreciate it. Good evening, students, trustees, staff, and parents. The motion at hand is concerning about anti-Palestinian racism, is about student safety and student voice. And as a student trustee who is not of the ethnic backgrounds involved in this war, I took the time to understand this issue to the best of my ability and took a supportive role rather than a leading one for this motion. I want to emphasize that my job as a student trustee is to represent the voices of students and hear the concerns of those who come up to me describing their experiences and feelings. And since October 7th, almost 600 students across our system have walked out of our schools and demanded a ceasefire in Gaza, as well as a statement from our board. I also saw many student-led initiatives, including the Day of Climate Justice, taking a sidestep, and activism surrounding fundraisers and spirit days for Palestine started to take priority in many students' hearts. Many students who have approached me personally described their experiences as a student who is of the backgrounds that is involved in this global conflict, and many of them are difficult to hear. All of this speaks to how much this global issue matters and relates to students at HWDSB. This is precisely why I was perplexed and disappointed after hearing from many students in our system on how their initiatives in their schools were not supported by teachers and staff. I was also very concerned about student reports over their treatment in schools, I quote from one of the correspondences submitted by an HWDSB student that many students have been told that they are not allowed to wear the traditional Palestinian keffiyeh or even the Palestinian flag or its colors because it was deemed as supporting terrorists, unquote. In summary, the freedom of students, particularly Palestinian students, has been restrained by our system. After identifying some of my peers who were feeling unsafe in schools and how their voices face difficulty, I felt the responsibility to talk to them about their experiences. With the help of Trustee Dahab and White, I consulted over 30 student leaders across 8 HWDSB high schools about their experiences in the past 2 months as Palestinian students. I saw amazing student leadership with anonymous forums being created to gather even more student voices across the board. The results of our consultations affirmed the reasons for our motions today. Students anonymously reported that their bake sale fundraiser for Palestine was not approved because the colors resembled the, quote, Hamas flag, while others were asked to engage in conversations with staff and administration because of their clothing attire. And in the words of our amazing director, we're committed to upholding human rights for all and creating an environment that is safe, inclusive, and respectful for all HWDSB students, staff, and families. And right now, many students have been reporting that they're not feeling that way. In the words of our dress code guidelines, quote, students have the right to express themselves, feel comfortable in what they wear, and the freedom to make dress choices, end quote. Students may wear and dress headwear requirements or support religious or creed accommodations. And right now, many students are reporting that this right is not being upheld. And in the words of our fundraising policy, fundraising may be used to support humanitarian causes that can increase student activism in helping to address international issues. And right now, these fundraising initiatives are not being supported in schools. I want to re-emphasize that this motion is about student safety and student voices. The, quote, regular student initiatives such as fundraisers and spirit days have faced unprecedented difficulties that, if not for their ethnic background, would not have faced. What I hope to achieve through this motion is a re-emphasis of student rights, as well as providing a blueprint for HWDSB staff on how to create safe spaces for students during times of global conflict like this one. Because it is truly disappointing hearing that common policies, such as the fundraising and student dress code policies, inducing the opposite effect of what they're intended for, or even worse, students facing disciplinary actions because of the misinterpretations of the policies. This motion will reaffirm the right to student expression, as well as protecting students from future cases of discrimination. Now, HWDSB is a diverse community that is home to many diverse ethnic backgrounds and provides education to many immigrants who come to this community seeking a safe and welcoming learning space. If the Board of Trustees passes this motion, it will send a message that HWDSB is dedicated to its stated commitment of upholding student safety and student voice. I hope that my motion, as well as my goals with this motion, is clear, and I call on all trustees to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Student Trustee Lin, for those words. Just a reminder to the gallery, please no more clapping. We typically don't allow for disruptions. Thank you. Trustee Dahab, go ahead.
Thank you. So first and foremost, my sincere gratitude, solidarity, and appreciation to the dozens of students across our system who offered insight and suggestions on this motion, some of whom are here tonight and others who are joining virtually. Thank you for being vulnerable and honestly sharing your experiences with us. You've been brave enough to name anti-Palestinian racism and fight against it in all of the ways possible. When I think about their intentions and their struggles and what they've shared, it's fundamentally because, like me and like all of us here, believe that every single student, including Palestinian and Muslim students, deserve to be safe in our schools. To Jenna, to Fatema, and to Lana, thank you for sharing your experiences with us. I know that standing up at the podium is not an easy task. To Student Trustee Lin for bringing this forward and for all of your work over the last few weeks to listen to students all across the system with so much care and intention as you work through this motion. And to Student Trustee Wang for all your support and for also holding space and listening to students across our system as they work through their experiences at school. Thank you all for your leadership and for your commitment to centering student voice, even when these conversations get difficult. I will be supporting this motion this evening, and I'm going to try to keep my remarks short for a few reasons, but primarily because I want us all to really sit with and think about the comments of Student Trustee Lin and all those who delegated this evening. Our schools are microcosms. That means that whatever's happening outside of schools, whether it's locally or nationally or globally, will inevitably seep into our school setting and vice versa. What students are telling us about their experiences in schools is not siloed. And I think that what our students are forcing us to think about is how our education system, our curriculum, and how we engage with world issues in our school impacts their learning experience and their overarching school structure. When I think about youth movements and what we are learning from youth in our system, I think a lot about the potential that public education has to disrupt systems on a local and global level that are rooted in oppression, colonialism, violence, and are at their core genocidal. I think about the parallels of our history and the history we reckon with across colonial Canada and how in the most intricate ways we still see those same ideologies seep into and inform our systems. I think about what Student Trustee Lin, Jenna, Lana, and Fatema are all challenging us to do this evening, whether it's through student-led walkouts calling for a permanent ceasefire and an end to the occupation, or whether it's initiatives at school to raise awareness about the genocide and the ongoing occupation of Palestine, or whether it's about fundraising and using what we have to share with those across the world. I think about what their foresight and their ability to mobilize others to think about how we build a better and more just world. We and they are literally paving their future, and I believe fundamentally that they have a right to demand and to fight for a better future without facing repercussions. I'm concerned about what I've learned and what I've heard about their experiences in schools and the stories of anti-Palestinian racism and Islamophobia that they're sharing. I spent some time this weekend looking through our equity action plan, something I do every so often, just as a reminder of some of our guiding principles and the good work that staff are undertaking regularly to improve our schools. And there's a lot of good stuff in there. And in the overview of the plan, it mentions specifically that it applies an anti-oppressive and human rights perspective with the goal of addressing inequities in achievement and well-being outcomes. It specifically names and identifies examples of oppression it seeks to address, including racism, classism, Islamophobia, antisemitism, amongst other types of oppression that as a board we continue to address and work through. As I read through the plan, and I know a new plan will be developed with the new strategic directions, I noticed that particular mentions of anti-Palestinian racism was not included. So I see this motion as an attempt to not only address the current realities that many Palestinian and Muslim students are experiencing, but also an attempt to fill a gap in our equity-based work as a system. When I think about how I want students to leave our systems at the end of their high school journeys, I want us to be able to send students off who are empowered to ask questions, who are empowered to have hard and difficult conversations about the world we live in, who are empowered to develop a strong moral compass that drives them to fight for a better world for all students, whether that be for kids here or for kids in Palestine. To students across our systems who are fighting every day to build a better world and call attention to the genocide in Gaza, know that I have your back and that I am proud of you. The last thing I'm going to say is this board meets regularly and our schedules are online, and the seats that you're all in are generally empty, and it's a pretty quiet room. So this is an invitation to keep engaging with the system and with the structure, to keep challenging us and demanding better from us, because I know that we can do better for all students in our system. So thank you. Gratitude to a lot of you.
Thank you, Trustee Dahab. Trustee White, your statement, please.
Statement? Said?
I think so.
Okay.
Your statement.
Did not prepare one, but just a couple of brief comments. Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I do genuinely look forward to motions like this. And when I say motions like this, I mean student-led topics that are brought into our boardroom by our student trustees and students across our system that have participated in a variety of ways. So there's a number of ways, this motion can, draw a lot of inferences. People can, take this to different levels, whatever. To me, I see this as student voice, giving us that snapshot into what's happening in our schools and in the student experience for a number of our HWDSB students. And I think at face value, that's the takeaway from this motion. And just sitting here, observing as you do during delegations and during the student trustee's introduction, I have a tendency to glance over at the director and the associate director Nunn, and perhaps Associate Director Gerard if I could see him. But typically, I glance over there because I want to see their reaction to hearing student voice in this boardroom. And both of them, the two I can see, were certainly very attentive and nodding and understanding if we have students in our system that are experiencing this type of, whether it's discrimination, negativity, misinformation, whatever it might be, our job here as a board is to solve those issues and to address those issues in our system. So just reading the body language, I see how great this exercise is to have these experiences brought into our boardroom. And I know as an adult here, an old man, not quite getting there, we have a tendency to, put our own spin on motions like this. And I'm not going to make any statements, any grand statements, because I don't think this needs some spin by the Ward 510 trustee. I think Student Trustee Lin said it very well, very clearly from the student experience, what this means, the type of work that we need to do. And remember that we're hearing about students' lived experiences, and it's our job to react to that. So for me, it's as simple as that. Definitely something we'd support without question, without doubt. Incredibly positive. And anytime we have a boardroom filled with students, it's a great day. It really is. Because as my colleague beside me, Trustee Dahab, mentioned, those seats are usually empty. And to see students who care about your schools, care about your colleagues, your friends, your families, is very, very touching and sincere. So thank you for coming out. And I'm very hopeful the board will pass this motion and we'll get on to the work that we need to. But thank you to everyone for their advocacy. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Trustee White. Questions or comments? Trustee Fehrman, go ahead.
Thank you. And through the chair, as the student trustee mentor, I would like to congratulate Student Trustee Lin on bringing his first motion forward to tonight's meeting. I respectfully ask that in support of Student Trustee Lin, that this motion be given the opportunity to be discussed in an uninterrupted, respectful manner tonight at this meeting. He has put in a lot of time, effort, and thought to bring these concerns on behalf of students forward tonight, and it deserves a respectful discussion, whether you agree with it or whether you agree with what is shared or not, and whether as a trustee you choose to support it or not. I also want to commend Student Trustee Lin for the amendment to include anti-Semitism to his motion. As a trustee, I recognize the different harms described in the correspondence we have received from all communities. No trustee would disagree that all of our students deserve to feel safe at our schools. As a board of trustees with purview over education, solving a world conflict that has been occurring for a very long time is not something within our power. What is within our power is supporting all students within HWDSB when experiencing harms to the best of our abilities. Having said that, I will be supporting the motion tonight.
Thank you very much for those comments, Trustee Fehrman. Does anyone else have any comments or questions? Trustee Noble, go ahead.
Thank you. I won't add too much to this because there's already been so many excellent and powerful voices added to this conversation. I think the important thing about this is that whether or not we agree with the truth, there are plenty of things that are happening in our schools, not on the other side of the world, that are impacting students in our communities. And realistically, schools are a microcosm of the broader context across the globe, and it's impossible for us to ignore that. I do have a concern about this in that it falls short from what I see of anything long-term. And I think that's sort of been acknowledged in writing this. Given all of the powerful statements that have been shared by delegates and the stories and frankly, all of the abhorrent things that have been shared. I worry, especially after how long, and of course, I say I worry, recognizing that I will absolutely 100% be voting in favor of this. I worry that after so many years of folks coming forward advocating for something to the tune of an anti-Islamophobia strategy that provides some sort of long-term direction, recognizing there are already other boards that have made one, so it wouldn't even be a first, that many of the items here are short-term, current crisis addressing action. So I just put that forward with the understanding that this, while it is an excellent start, is vastly insufficient.
Thank you for those remarks, Trustee Noble. I will just highlight that in the motion, we do have direction that HWDSB staff provide a report back on the included action items in the motion, but I'll actually turn over to our Director of Education to provide perhaps a response to some of your concerns, and so that she can identify exactly how staff would operationalize this motion should it pass tonight. Thank you.
Thank you,
Go ahead,
Chair.
Director. Sorry, thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Through the Chair, with that introduction of some of my concerns, obviously my concerns are what we heard this evening from the delegates. Much has been said already this evening to the delegates, thanking them for their courage, their vulnerability, and their presence in sharing, and I'd like to echo that as well. Obviously, it's very concerning to hear what has been shared. I do know that work is underway to address, I would say, racism. We have, but not specifically anti-Palestinian racism as yet. We have a human rights policy that we use to guide much of the work that we are doing. But we recognize, especially as a learning institution, that we are always needing to learn more and do better. And to the point, Chair, made by Trustee Noble, we are currently in the process, and I believe Trustee Dahab also shared knowledge and understanding that we are currently updating our equity action plan. And so this is these actions are certainly things that we can include in the equity action plan. But to the point of longevity and sustainability, I would suggest that they go a little bit beyond just training and do go to speaking of a strategy. That is work that we have begun, and I think we are in a position to expand upon in the equity action plan. I do want to say, again, acknowledging what we heard here this evening, that these are real and lived experiences, and you cannot listen to those experiences and feel good about that at all. I want to echo again what Chair Miller said. For anyone who is experiencing racism, discrimination, harm in our system, sometimes it's difficult to trust the people who are right there, but we do offer and we do ask that you speak with your teachers. If you don't get anywhere, then the principal. If you don't get anywhere, then the superintendent. If that doesn't work, we do have, we help, HWDSB Helps, which is an app. We also have supports on our mental health and well-being webpage. And finally, we also have a human rights office where you can make reports. Our job this evening is to listen and acknowledge that harm has happened and then to take steps to address it. And that's what we intend to do. So thank you. And through the chair, thank you.
I appreciate that response. Director Trustee Noble, did you have any follow-up or any other comments or questions?
One small piece, I think with the addition of anti-Semitism in here, I think it is pretty imperative that we work towards, I guess, gaining a better shared understanding of what that means, because I think there's sometimes some confusion about what constitutes anti-Semitism and what is perhaps not. And I think that there are many conversations to even be had around that. So also, I just want to take a moment to clarify that when I'm speaking about support for the anti-Islamophobia strategy. I'm not trying to say that Palestine is just an Islamic, I guess, state or region in which there are only Muslim individuals. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you very much, Trustee Noble. Are there any other comments or questions? Looking as well online in case there are any comments there. Trustee Danko?
Thank you. Just through the chair to share a brief comment. I want to echo the thanks that we've already heard for the delegations and for everyone being here, but also for all of the correspondence that we've received, not just for this meeting, for our last meeting. We've received a ton of emails, phone calls, but it is great to see students taking the lead and that consultation with students leading to this motion. I think one of the hard things to hear, a lot of this is very hard to hear as a board, because the fact is we have not served our students as well as we would like during this critical time of crisis. Hearing that students are feeling that there's silence. As the prior chair, I just want to acknowledge that that's something that I believe weighed on the board, but it certainly weighed on me as a spokesperson for the board. And even following the events on October 7th, we did have a board statement from the director, followed by a statement by myself as chair. And it's a small thing, but the words that I chose to use in my statement were purposeful, and they were meant to tell people that we know this is bigger than one day or one incident. And it talked about the ensuing violence and standing with people that are experiencing that, and that was at that time a nod to what was still beginning to happen. And then we've seen what can really only be called collective punishment continue to happen. So I just wanted to share that as chair, the sense of silence from the board comes from a place of trying to care for everyone in our system, and trying to negotiate complex issues, not just this one, but that happen worldwide, in a way that demonstrates care for all students. And I think sometimes when we try to do that, it results in students feeling unheard. And I think that's a really important takeaway for us to consider as we go forward. I will absolutely support the motion. I do appreciate the amendment that was made, as even in the correspondence this week, while asking for support for students who have Palestinian backgrounds, who are experiencing Islamophobia or anti-Palestinian hate. There's also acknowledgement that anti-Semitism is very real. And I think, yes, clarity can be helpful on both of those fronts, but I appreciate that while people are coming to advocate for a very specific thing, they're also mindful of the impacts that others are experiencing. And I think, again, that speaks to what our students are really standing up for, and they're standing up from a place of care and concern for what's happening in the world. So I just wanted to acknowledge that and just mention when we are a school board, whether you're the chair of the board or an individual trustee, we're often trying to navigate this. And I think it's been so important to hear from student voice that we have a lot of important work to do better. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Trustee Danko. Student Trustee Lin?
Yeah, I'd just like to thank you.
You've technically spoken once, so. Oh. Yeah, so we can do closing remarks, but I'm just going to make sure that everyone who would like to speak has had that chance before I come back to you, okay?
Yeah.
Student Trustee Wang?
Feel free to check that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to the chair. I think I'm just going to echo what has already been said many times this evening. I would just like to voice my support for this motion. I wholeheartedly agree that this is a big problem that needs to be resolved, and some incidents that I have heard from across the board are by no means inclusive for students. And I think that everyone should be able to step into their classroom feeling that their culture and voices are respected. And I think this motion can address and solve many of the tension conflicts that has occurred across the board. And this motion is a really good start. And I since out to all of the students at HWDSB that we do not condone discrimination or any sort of violence because of one's culture or background. So, like Trustee Noble said before, I just also would like to echo that I think that education is needed for all of us, including the adults in the room. And long-term curriculum, I know it's not going to be a one day thing or even a year thing, but I do think that we need some sort of long-term strategies and even curriculums taught at school to teach kids about these humanitarian situations. And I'm really hopeful that we'll be able to work out a solution that is in the best interest of all of the students at HWDSB. And lastly, I would just like to take a minute to thank Trustee Dahab and Student Trustee Lin for all of their hard work. I couldn't be as involved as I wish because in this motion because of some personal and school reasons. But it's a really good to see that they have taken this project under their wings and made something like really awesome out of it. And I can tell you that they have been working tirelessly on it. So I would like to thank both of them, and also like to take time to thank all the students here with us today. Thank you so much for taking like these hours of your day to share your concerns and fight for what you think is right. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Student Trustee Wang. Last look around for any other comments or questions from any trustees. Okay, seeing none, I'll just share some of my own remarks. I want to echo what has already been echoed many times. A big thank you to all the students who shared their experiences. Especially thank you to Student Trustee Lin, who by sounds of it, did the bulk of the work to bring those experiences to the forefront. We know that when people in our system share these types of stories and share very concerning experiences that they had to go through first in order to have to advocate for that. We know that the onus and the responsibility of reporting and the follow through often is the heaviest on the people experiencing that hate. So not only do we have students who are grappling with what is potentially a discriminatory situation, they then have to be their own best cheerleader, for lack of a better metaphor. So I want to recognize that, and I echo how hard that work is. And just, I think that my approach to this motion has always been about it being a student-led, student-centered advocacy. It is absolutely something that we are already working on, already developing. But I think that tonight's discussion and the presentations tonight really highlight how quickly a situation can evolve. And our students are living it in real time. And how serious things can get even when we think we're ticking all of the boxes, and even when we think we're saying all the right words and we're reaching out and we're making all the appropriate statements. So in particular, Trustee Danko, I appreciate the sort of the transparency there that sometimes as school boards, we grapple with what the right thing to say is and when to say it. So that is a real struggle, but tonight is not necessarily entirely about that. Tonight is about our student experiences and as how we as a board strengthen those experiences and don't leave the responsibility of the reporting and the embetterment of those experiences to our students. We're the adults in the room, and we're happy and willing to do the work. So thank you very much for bringing the work to us. I will also be supporting the motion. I'll give one quick look to see if there are any other comments from anyone who has not spoken this evening. Trustee Buck, go ahead.
Thank you. I'll be brief. You guys have all spoken so well. You guys have spoken so well. Thank you for sharing about your stories today. It's very helpful to understand the context that you're living in, and that can sometimes be really hard to pick up on in an email. And so hearing from you today was very meaningful. Thank you to Student Trustee Lin and to Trustee Dahab for the work that you've done in meeting with students and collating all that you've been hearing, and also for including language from the correspondence that we received last time as well, so that we really highlight that all of our students are important in acknowledging that harm is being done, and that we can and should be doing better for everyone. So thank you tonight. This conversation seems really positive in the direction that we all collectively want to be heading in. And so I'm grateful for the time that each one of you took to be here tonight. And in the reporting that Chair Miller mentioned, that hardness of having been hurt and then navigating how to express that in a way that, well, it frankly can increase the hurt. So I'm not saying that well, but I just want to acknowledge and echo what she had said there. But thank you all so much for your work tonight.
Okay, seeing no further comments or questions, Student Trustee Lin, your closing remarks. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Miller, and I'll keep this short as well. Seeing the great work that everyone has done in regards to this motion, I think my final words are only to re-vocalize the voices of students once again. I want to thank everyone who has put forth their voices in support of this motion. I want to thank Lana, Fatema, and Jenna specifically for their bravery in coming to the school board and sharing very personal words and experiences. I want to re-emphasize that this motion about student voice is an urgent one as well. I recognize Trustee Noble's concern about the long-term impacts and effects of this motion, which only shows the importance of this motion to pass, so strategies can be prioritized next. Our schools are indeed a microcosm, and our students are very bright. We understand and reflect on international issues, as well as we actively vocalize our concerns. This motion is very timely, and I appreciate everyone's thoughtful discussion, and I hope that we can demonstrate that HWDSB is indeed dedicated to our commitment of upholding student safety and student voice. And I call on all trustees to support this motion once again. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for your remarks, Student Trustee Lin. So just to make sure that we are following our procedure, I'll first be looking to vote on the amendment that was read into the record.
Just a point of order. The motion's not on the floor until it's been read and moved and seconded. So technically it was moved and seconded as stated, even though we received it in writing.
That was the recommendation from the trustee officer, so we will go ahead. It is as read in on the floor, sponsored by Trustee Dahab, seconded by Trustee White. All in favor of the current motion. Okay, that is everyone in the room, including both student trustees. And Trustee Archer, can I? Perfect, thank you. So that is unanimous. That motion is passed. Thank you.